The road was long and quiet, stretching far beyond what the eye could see. It ran between dry fields and old trees that stood still in the evening air. Very few cars passed this road, especially at this hour. The sun was slowly moving down, painting the sky with soft orange and pale gold colors. Near the edge of the road sat an elderly couple. The man's name was Tom, and the woman beside him was Mary. They had been married for many years, longer than most people could imagine. Their hair was gray, their faces lined with time, but their eyes still carried warmth and care for each other. They were sitting on the rough ground, close together. Tom leaned slightly forward, resting one hand on the road for support. Mary sat beside him, holding her small bag close to her chest. Their clothes were dusty, and their bodies felt weak from the long and difficult day. Cars passed by quickly. Some drivers looked ahead and did not notice them. Others may have seen them but chose not to slow down. The sound of engines came and went, leaving behind silence each time. Mary looked down the road and sighed softly. Tom noticed her expression. He turned his head slowly and spoke in a calm voice. "It will be okay," he said. Mary gave a small smile, though her eyes showed worry. "I know," she replied. "I just wish someone would stop." They had not planned to be there. Earlier that day, Tom and Mary had started their journey with happiness. They were traveling to see their grandchild, someone they had not seen in many months. They had packed carefully, bringing gifts and old photos to share. Mary had baked small treats the night before, wrapping them with care. The journey was supposed to be simple, but things had changed. Now, they were alone on the roadside, unsure of what would happen next. The wind grew cooler as evening approached. Mary rubbed her arms and leaned closer to Tom. He gently placed his arm around her shoulders, trying to give comfort even though he felt tired himself. "Do you remember our first trip together?" Mary asked quietly. Tom smiled a little. "Yes," he said. "We got lost for hours." Mary laughed softly, the sound barely rising above the wind. "And we were not scared at all," she said. "We were young and full of hope." Tom nodded. "We still have hope." Mary looked at him with love. Even in this moment, sitting on a cold road, he tried to stay strong for her. Time passed slowly. The sky darkened more, and the orange light faded into soft blue. The road became harder to see. Mary felt fear growing in her chest, but she did not want to show it. She whispered, "Tom, what if no one comes?" Tom paused before answering. He did not want to lie, but he wanted to give her peace. "Someone will come," he said. "Good people still exist." Mary held his hand tightly. They had faced many challenges in life. Hard work, loss, and long years had tested them, but they had always stayed together. This road was just another test, though it felt heavier than most. A car passed by faster than the others, its lights flashing briefly over their faces. Mary raised her hand slightly, but the car did not slow. Her hand fell back to her lap. Tears filled her eyes, but she blinked them away. Tom noticed and squeezed her hand. "Do not lose heart," he said gently. They sat in silence again. Far away, the sound of a larger engine could be heard. It was slow and deep, different from the cars. Tom lifted his head, trying to see through the fading light. Mary heard it too. "Tom," she said, her voice hopeful. The sound grew closer, steady and calm. The shape of a large truck appeared in the distance, its headlights glowing softly. Mary felt her heart beat faster. She raised her hand again, this time higher. Tom tried to stand, but his legs were weak. He stayed seated, not wanting to fall. The truck continued moving forward. For a moment, Mary feared it would pass like the others. But then something changed. The truck slowed. The engine sound softened, and the headlights angled toward the side of the road. The large vehicle moved closer, careful and controlled. Mary held her breath. Tom felt a strange warmth in his chest. The truck came to a stop a short distance away. The engine stayed on, humming quietly. A door opened. A man stepped down from the truck. He was tall, wearing a simple jacket. His movements were calm, not rushed. He looked toward the couple, his face serious but kind. Mary felt relief wash over her like a gentle wave. Tom let out a long breath he did not know he had been holding. The man walked toward them slowly, making sure not to scare them. "Are you all right?" he asked in a steady voice. Mary nodded quickly, unable to speak at first. Tom answered, "We need some help." The man nodded, understanding without asking many questions. "My name is Ben," he said. "You are not alone now." At that moment, the cold road no longer felt so empty. And this was only the beginning. Ben stood near the elderly couple, keeping a respectful distance at first. The road was quiet again, except for the low sound of his truck engine behind him. He could see that Tom and Mary were tired, not just in their bodies but deep inside their faces. Years of life showed in their eyes, mixed with worry and fear from this long day. Ben bent slightly so he would not seem too tall or frightening. "Please take your time," he said calmly. "You are safe now." Mary nodded and tried to stand, but her legs shook. Ben quickly moved closer, holding his hand out in a gentle way. Mary placed her hand in his, and with his steady support, she stood slowly. Tom tried to rise as well, pressing his palm against the ground. Ben helped him too, careful and patient. They stood together near the roadside, the cool air brushing against their faces. Ben took off his jacket and offered it to Mary. "It is cold," he said simply. Mary hesitated for a moment, then accepted it with gratitude. She wrapped it around her shoulders and smiled. "Thank you," she said softly. Ben nodded and looked at Tom. "Are you hurt?" he asked. Tom shook his head. "Just tired." Ben understood. He had seen many people on the road, but something about this couple touched him deeply. Maybe it was the way they stayed close to each other, or how they spoke with care even in trouble. Ben walked back to his truck and returned with a bottle of water and some food. He handed them over slowly. "Please drink," he said. Mary took small sips, feeling strength return little by little. Tom drank too, his hands still shaking slightly. The simple kindness made their hearts feel lighter. They sat together on the edge of the road again, but now the silence felt different. It was no longer lonely. Ben stood nearby, watching the road to make sure no cars came too close. After a few minutes, Ben spoke again. "What happened?" he asked gently. Tom looked at Mary, then back at Ben. "We were traveling to see our grandchild," Tom said. "Things went wrong, and we ended up here." Ben did not press for details. He could tell they did not want to relive the hard moments. Instead, he nodded with understanding. "You were brave to keep going," he said. Mary looked at Ben with surprised eyes. She was not used to strangers speaking with such respect. "You did not have to stop," she said. "Many did not." Ben looked down at the road for a moment, then back at them. "I believe stopping is important," he replied. "You never know when someone needs help." The sky grew darker as they talked. Stars began to appear, small and distant. Ben knew they could not stay there too long. "I am going to call for help," Ben said. "Someone will come to take you somewhere warm." Mary felt a sudden fear. "Will you leave?" she asked quietly. Ben smiled softly. "No. I will stay until help arrives." Those words brought peace to both Tom and Mary. Ben made the call and explained the situation clearly. Then he returned to stand near them, keeping watch. Time passed slowly, but Ben stayed calm, talking about small things to keep their minds at ease. He told them about his job, about the many roads he traveled, and the towns he had seen. Mary listened with interest, asking gentle questions. Tom shared stories from his younger days, when he worked long hours and dreamed of a simple life. Ben listened carefully, never interrupting. As they talked, something special happened. The fear that had once filled the air slowly faded. In its place grew trust. Mary smiled more often now. Tom sat straighter, feeling dignity return. At one point, Mary looked at Ben and said, "You remind me of our son when he was young." Ben felt a tight feeling in his chest. "That is kind of you," he said. Lights appeared far down the road. Ben stood up, watching carefully. "Help is coming," he said. Mary held Tom's hand tightly, her eyes filling with tears, but this time they were tears of relief. The vehicle stopped nearby, and trained helpers stepped out. They spoke calmly and checked on the couple. Ben explained everything clearly, making sure Tom and Mary were treated with care. Before leaving, Mary turned to Ben. "We will never forget this," she said. "You stopped when others did not." Tom nodded. "You changed our night." Ben felt humbled. "I just did what anyone should," he replied. But deep inside, he knew this moment would stay with him forever. As the vehicle drove away, Ben stood alone again on the roadside. The road was quiet, but his heart felt full. He returned to his truck, sitting for a moment before starting the engine. He looked down the road where the couple had been. Some stops in life were not planned. Some choices changed everything. And Ben knew this journey was far from over. Ben sat inside his truck after the helpers left with Tom and Mary. He rested his hands on the steering wheel but did not start the engine right away. The road ahead was empty, and the night had grown quiet again. The stars above looked brighter now, as if the sky itself was watching. Ben took a deep breath. He had driven thousands of roads in his life. He had passed towns, forests, rivers, and long empty highways. Most days felt the same. Drive, deliver, rest, and repeat. He never expected that stopping on this road would change how he felt inside. He started the engine and slowly pulled back onto the road. As the truck moved forward, Ben's mind stayed behind with the elderly couple. He kept thinking about Mary's weak smile and Tom's tired but proud eyes. They reminded him of his own parents, who lived far away in a quiet village. He had not visited them in a long time. The road lights flashed past, one by one. Ben reached a small resting area a few miles ahead. He decided to stop for the night. He parked the truck and stepped outside. The cool air touched his face, and he looked up at the sky again. He thought about how close Tom and Mary had come to being unseen. That thought stayed heavy in his heart. The next morning, Ben woke early. He bought a simple breakfast from a small shop nearby and sat alone at a table. Other drivers talked loudly around him, laughing and sharing stories. Ben stayed quiet, his mind still busy. A man sitting across from him spoke. "You look like you saw something serious last night," the man said. Ben looked up, surprised. "Something like that," Ben replied. The man nodded. "The road can change people." Ben thought about those words. After breakfast, Ben returned to his truck and continued his journey. As he drove, he noticed small things he had often ignored before. A broken sign on the roadside. A man walking alone with heavy bags. A family resting near their car. He realized how easy it was to look away. Later that day, Ben received a call. It was from the local helpers who had taken Tom and Mary away. "They are safe," the voice said. "They asked us to tell you that." Ben felt relief spread through him. "Thank you," he said quietly. "They also wanted you to know they are being taken to their family." Ben smiled for the first time that day. The journey continued, but Ben was no longer the same. He drove with more care, not just with his hands, but with his heart. That evening, Ben stopped at another small town. He walked into a diner and ordered a warm meal. As he waited, he noticed an older woman sitting alone, looking confused. She held a piece of paper and kept reading it again and again. Ben stood up and walked over. "Do you need help?" he asked politely. The woman looked up, surprised but thankful. "Yes," she said. "I am trying to find the bus stop." Ben smiled. "I can help you." He walked her outside and pointed the way, making sure she understood. She thanked him many times before leaving. Ben returned to the diner and sat down again. Something inside him felt right. Days passed. Ben kept driving, but now he stopped more often. He checked on people. He listened. He helped in small ways. Sometimes it was just giving directions. Other times it was offering water or a kind word. Each time, he felt a quiet strength growing inside him. One evening, Ben finally reached home. He parked his truck and entered his small apartment. The place was simple and clean, but it felt empty. He sat on the couch and thought again about Tom and Mary. He picked up his phone and called his parents. They answered with surprise and happiness. They talked for a long time. Ben listened to their voices, warm and familiar. When the call ended, he felt peace. A few days later, Ben received a letter. It was from Tom and Mary. Inside the envelope was a short note written carefully. Dear Ben, we are home now and safe. We see our grandchild every day. We think of you often and thank you for stopping. You reminded us that kindness still lives on the road. Ben read the letter twice. He folded it gently and placed it in his pocket. From that day on, Ben kept the letter with him on every journey. It became his reminder. Weeks later, Ben passed the same road where he had met Tom and Mary. He slowed down without thinking. He looked at the roadside, now empty and quiet. He parked the truck for a moment and stepped outside. The wind moved softly through the grass. Ben smiled. That road had given him something valuable. It had shown him that one choice could touch many lives. As he returned to his truck and drove away, Ben knew this was not the end of the story. It was only the beginning. Tom and Mary woke up in their small home with sunlight coming through the window. The room felt warm and peaceful. The sound of birds outside made Mary smile. It was their first quiet morning after many difficult days. Mary sat up slowly and looked at Tom. We are home, she said softly. Tom nodded. Thanks to one kind person. They both thought about Ben. Their grandchild ran into the room, full of energy and laughter. The child hugged them tightly, and for a moment, all the fear from the road felt far away. That day, the house filled with warmth, stories, and gentle joy. Later, Mary sat at the table and began to write. She wrote carefully, choosing each word with care. She wanted Ben to know how much his help meant to them. Tom read the letter afterward and smiled, proud of her words. While life returned to normal for Tom and Mary, something else was happening far beyond their home. Ben continued his journeys, driving through cities, villages, and quiet highways. But now, he carried a different feeling with him. He noticed people more. He paid attention to small moments others ignored. One afternoon, Ben stopped at a fuel station. A young worker there looked tired and upset. Ben greeted him kindly and thanked him for his work. The worker's face brightened, just a little, but enough to matter. That small moment stayed with Ben. At another stop, Ben saw a family struggling to carry heavy bags. He helped without being asked. The parents thanked him, and the children waved as he left. Ben did not think of these actions as special. To him, they felt natural now. One evening, Ben stopped at a local diner near a busy road. He ordered a meal and sat by the window. A group of drivers nearby were talking about the road, about how people only cared about reaching their destination. Ben listened quietly. After a while, he spoke. Sometimes stopping is more important than arriving, he said. The others looked at him, curious. Ben shared a simple version of his story. He talked about seeing two people on the roadside and choosing to stop. He did not add drama. He did not speak for praise. He only spoke from the heart. The diner grew quiet. One driver nodded slowly. Another looked thoughtful. A third said nothing but stared at the table. That night, some of them left the diner with new thoughts in their minds. Days later, one of those drivers stopped to help someone else on the road. He remembered Ben's words and chose to slow down. That person later told another story. The chain continued. Kindness began to move from one person to another. Back at Tom and Mary's town, neighbors noticed something different too. Tom and Mary shared their story during a small community gathering. They spoke about fear, hope, and the stranger who helped them. People listened closely. Some wiped their eyes. Others nodded in understanding. After that day, neighbors checked on each other more often. They greeted strangers. They offered help without waiting to be asked. One choice had grown into many. Weeks passed. Ben received messages from people he had helped. Some were simple thank you notes. Others shared how his kindness gave them strength during hard times. Ben kept all the notes in a small box inside his truck. One afternoon, Ben's truck needed repairs. He waited at a small shop, watching people pass by. An elderly man nearby looked confused, trying to read a map. Ben walked over. "Can I help you find your way?" he asked. The man smiled with relief. "Yes, please," he said. Ben helped him, just like before. The shop owner watched this and later said to Ben, "You have a good heart." Ben smiled but said nothing. He did not think of himself as special. He only believed in doing what felt right. That evening, Ben sat alone in his truck, reading the letter from Tom and Mary again. He thought about how one stop had changed so much. He thought about how many people might still be waiting on quiet roads. Ben made a promise to himself. He would always stop when he could. He would always listen. He would always care. Far away, Tom and Mary sat on their porch, watching the sunset. Mary leaned her head on Tom's shoulder. "Life can be hard," she said. "But kindness makes it softer." Tom nodded. We were reminded of that. The sun disappeared, and the sky turned gentle and calm. Somewhere on a long road, a truck moved steadily forward, carrying more than goods. It carried a lesson. And that lesson was still traveling. Time moved forward, quiet and steady, just like the roads Ben traveled every day. Seasons changed as his truck crossed many lands. Trees lost their leaves and grew them back again. The world kept moving, but the lesson Ben learned on that silent road stayed with him. Ben became known among other drivers as someone who cared. When people spoke about him, they did not talk about how fast he drove or how many miles he covered. They spoke about how he listened and how he helped when others did not. One morning, Ben stopped at a small roadside cafe. Inside, a notice board hung near the door. Someone had written a message in clear letters. "If you see someone in need, stop and help." Ben stood there for a moment, reading it again. He smiled, knowing how powerful simple words could be. Far away, Tom and Mary lived peacefully with their family. Their days were filled with small joys. Morning tea, evening walks, and laughter from their grandchild filled their home. Yet they never forgot that night on the road. One afternoon, Tom suggested they do something special. "We were helped when we needed it most," he said. "We should help others too." Mary agreed. They began volunteering in their community. They welcomed travelers, helped neighbors, and shared warm meals with those who felt alone. They did not speak loudly about their past, but when asked, they shared their story with honesty and gratitude. Their kindness touched many lives. A young couple once told them, "Your words gave us hope." Mary smiled, remembering Ben's calm voice on the road. One evening, Ben received a package at a delivery stop. Inside was a small framed photo. It showed Tom, Mary, and their grandchild standing together, smiling in the sunlight. On the back, a message was written. "Because you stopped, our family stands together today." Ben held the photo carefully. His hands trembled slightly. He placed the frame on the dashboard of his truck, where he could see it every day. That photo became his guide. Months later, Ben faced a difficult choice. He was running late on a delivery. The road was busy, and time mattered. Then, ahead of him, he saw a small car stopped on the side. A woman stood nearby, looking worried. Ben slowed down. He thought about time. He thought about responsibility. Then he remembered the road, the elderly couple, and the choice he had made before. Ben pulled over. The woman needed simple help. Nothing serious, just someone willing to stop. Ben helped her, and she thanked him with relief shining in her eyes. When Ben returned to the road, he felt calm. Being late no longer felt important. That night, Ben reached his destination. His manager noticed the delay but listened when Ben explained. Instead of anger, the manager nodded. "You did the right thing," he said. Ben felt proud. Years passed. Ben grew older, just like Tom and Mary had. His hair showed signs of time, and his steps slowed slightly. But his heart stayed strong. One day, Ben decided to take a different role. He began training new drivers. He taught them how to drive safely, but more importantly, he taught them how to care. The road is not just a path, he told them. It is a place where lives meet. The young drivers listened. Some remembered his words. Some passed them on. The lesson continued. On a warm afternoon, Ben received another letter. It was from Tom and Mary. The writing was slower now, but the message was clear. "We are grateful every day. We teach our grandchild to stop and help others. Your choice lives on through us." Ben folded the letter and held it close. He looked out at the road one last time before starting his truck. The sun was setting, just like it had on that first night. Ben smiled. He understood something important. One decision can change a moment. One moment can change a life. And one life can change many others. The truck moved forward, steady and calm. The road stretched ahead, not silent anymore, but full of meaning. Because kindness, once chosen, never truly ends.